In a certain area of the auction continent, Lin Dong and his companions wandered into a vast auction plaza. Even from several thousand miles away, they had already sensed several formidable auras in the sea of people here. As they landed on the white stone plaza, an elderly voice, carrying a faint smile, echoed from the front. 10,000 flame Dharmakaya, 69th rank of the 99 supreme Dharmakayas, capable of cultivating all the fires of heaven and earth. If successful, one could burn the heavens and scorch the earth with a mere gesture. The starting price, 1.8 million supreme spiritual liquid. The elderly voice reverberated through the heavens and earth, carrying with it a vast spiritual power that seemed to shake the very mountains and rivers. Lin Dong and his companions turned their gaze toward the vast plaza in front of them. They quickly realized this place was different from others. In most places, auctions were held on a platform where multiple people would take turns auctioning their items. But here, on the white stone plaza, 5 figures were at the center of attention. Since arriving on the auction continent, Lin Dong had spent the entire day exploring with Elder Song. He had learned that the auction continent didn't just have one type of auction. There were at least 3 or more different formats. The most common method was the turn-based auction, where multiple people took turns auctioning their items. However, there was also a higher-level auction style known as the strategic auction. Right now, this white stone plaza was hosting such an auction. A strategic auction was where multiple people stood on the same platform, each offering their items for auction. In this scenario, bidders had more choices, and the auction table itself became a battlefield. The auctioneers competed not just by the value of their items, but by their auction techniques. If one auctioneer's technique stood out, the others would serve as a backdrop, making it easier for that person to sell their items. This was the essence of a strategic auction, a tug-of-war where everyone hoped to be the one highlighted. A strategic auction featuring 5 Earth Supremes. Let's stay and watch, Elder Song said, smiling as he looked at the ongoing auction. Elder Song, who are these 5? Lin Dong asked, his eyes drawn to the 5 figures seated on large chairs in the center of the plaza. These 5 had become the focal point of the entire venue. 2 were elderly men, 2 were younger men, and the last was a woman in plain robes. From Lin Dong's perception, the weakest among them was at the early Earth Supreme stage, while the strongest, an elderly man, had reached the mid-Earth Supreme stage, not weaker than Lin Dong himself. Lin Dong understood the significance of having 5 Earth Supremes gathered together. In the Great Thousand Worlds, Earth Supremes were top-tier experts, so he couldn't help but feel curious about their identities. From left to right, the first is Lu Tiandao, the lord of the Xintian Palace from the northern border of the Tianluo continent, Elder Song explained. The Xintian Palace? Lin Dong was slightly taken aback. He actually possessed a divine item called the Xintian Palace, and one of his reasons for coming to the auction continent was to find materials to improve it. The second is the Immortal Bone Elder, a member of the 12 strongest in the western region of the Great Thousand Continent, though he ranks last. The third is Qing Tianlong, the protector of the Qing Tian Spirit Academy. He is one of the strongest among the 5 protectors of the 5 major academies. The fourth is a powerhouse from the Great Heaven Domain in the eastern region of the Great Thousand Continent, likely already at the mid-Earth Supreme stage. The last is the 4th Elder of the Myriad Flames Heavenly Palace from the Central Heaven Continent, Elder Song continued. Wait, is the Myriad Flames Heavenly Palace really that strong? Their 4th Elder is already at the Earth Supreme level? Lin Dong was somewhat surprised. The Palace Master of the Myriad Flames Heavenly Palace, Xia Tianqing, has already reached the Heavenly Supreme level. He's accompanied by a half-step Heavenly Supreme expert. Not to mention, the Myriad Flames Heavenly Palace has done a lot for the lower dimensional worlds, even rescuing hundreds of them in the past, Elder Song laughed. Near-perfect divine art, Heavenly Seal of Protection. This seal is divided into 3 levels, each stronger than the previous one. When fully mastered, the 3 seals can be combined, reaching the level of a near-perfect divine art. 2 million supreme spiritual liquid. The strongest mid-stage Earth Supreme Practitioner also took out an ancient scroll, placing it before him, and said calmly, "This 10,000 flame Dharmakaya was found in a secret Earth Supreme stash. Furthermore, I learned that this stash was left behind by a powerful Earth Supreme named 10,000 Flame, venerable thousands of years ago. And his Supreme Dharmakaya is the 10,000 Flame Dharmakaya, said the Immortal Bone Elder. In front of him hovered a jade tablet emitting radiant firelight. Carved on the tablet were various colorful flames, rising and forming an imposing Supreme Dharmakaya. This high-level Supreme Dharmakaya, which could easily provoke bloody competition, was now placed before everyone. Anyone with enough Supreme Spiritual Liquid could buy it. Is there anyone interested? Seeing the competition between the two Earth Supremes, many began discussing the value of these items and comparing them. At this moment, Lin Dong also looked at the fiery jade tablet, seemingly intrigued. What's wrong? Do you want to cultivate it? Asked Ling Qingzhu beside him. Isn't the Flame Lord in seclusion? This would be a great item for him, Lin Dong said, and his words soon spread among the crowd. I choose the 10,000 Flame Dharmakaya, 250,000 Supreme Spiritual Liquid. When Lin Dong's words spread, many turned their attention to him. Some high-level Supreme practitioners were momentarily stunned after sensing Lin Dong's unfathomable aura. At the same time, many decided to abandon competing for the item. It wasn't due to fear of Lin Dong's revenge. In the auction continent, with the ancient divine clan backing him, Lin Dong wouldn't dare cause trouble over a bidding war. Those who gave up the auction simply followed a logical train of thought. The stronger the practitioner, the greater their wealth and resources. Lin Dong's power was at least 9th grade supreme, or even higher, and the wealth he carried could easily crush these envious individuals. Of course, this logic wasn't absolute, so some still chose to compete. 280,000 Supreme Spiritual Liquid. A middle-aged man spoke. He was the ruler of a powerful force from a distant advanced continent, with 8th grade Supreme Strength. 300,000 Supreme Spiritual Liquid. Another bid came from an elder, his strength not inferior to the man's. While the 10,000 Flame Dharmakaya was being auctioned, another auction for the Heavenly Seal of Protection started. 3 or 4 people were competing for it, making it attract more attention than the 10,000 Flame Dharmakaya. The number of people eyeing the 10,000 Flame Dharmakaya decreased, but as attention shifted away, Lu Tiandao, standing beside the Immortal Bone Elder, glanced at the jade tablet with a squint, seemingly deep in thought. At the same time, Lin Dong, seeing the two people competing with him, felt somewhat helpless. However, 300,000 Supreme Spiritual Liquid was still within his acceptable range. If the bidding price exceeded 350,000, Lin Dong decided he would give up on the 10,000 Flame Dharmakaya. After all, this was the auction continent, where divine arts or Supreme Dharmakayas were commonplace. If he couldn't acquire it here, he could always try elsewhere. Just as Lin Dong was about to bid his 350,000 Supreme Spiritual Liquid, a voice that stunned everyone rang out. 400,000 Supreme Spiritual Liquid. I will take the 10,000 Flame Dharmakaya. The deep and calm voice echoed, and what surprised everyone wasn't the higher bid but the person making it. Lin Dong furrowed his brow as the bidder was not one of the surrounding competitors, but the person seated at the far left of the platform. Xintian Palace, Lu Tiandao. Heh, it's starting to get interesting. Lu, did you come up here to secure the priority bidding rights? Said the Immortal Bone Elder with a laugh. I have a son who was born with a natural fire affinity. I'm simply preparing for him, Lu Tiandao replied. Heh, since you have an heir, I'll give you some face. The Immortal Bone Elder chuckled, then turned to Lin Dong, saying indifferently, how about this? Whoever can put up 450,000 Supreme Spiritual Liquid, the 10,000 Flame Dharmakaya will be theirs. Upon hearing this, Lu Tiandao glanced at the Immortal Bone Elder. This old man was still trying to make an extra 50,000 Supreme Spiritual Liquid at the end. 450,000 it is. I'll take it. Is there anyone else interested in continuing the bidding? Lu Tiandao said indifferently. He scanned the crowd, then glanced at Lin Dong and the others ahead. He knew Lin Dong had been preparing to bid again. Young brother, are you still interested in this 10,000 Flame Dharmakaya? No, this 10,000 Flame Dharmakaya is indeed powerful, but I don't think it's worth the 5 million Supreme Spiritual Liquid. I think I'll pass. Upon hearing this, Lin Dong smiled gently and then, holding Ling Qingzhu's hand, he prepared to leave the area and head elsewhere. On the white stone square, Lu Tiandao watched as Lin Dong and the others were leaving. He too smiled, and then, with a flick of his finger, a silver-white spatial bracelet flew towards the immortal Bone Elder. The Elder smiled as he accepted the bracelet containing over 4 million supreme spiritual liquid, and with a flick of his finger, the red jade slip containing the 10,000 flame Dharmakaya was sent towards Lu Tiandao. Nearby, the heavenly seal of protection was purchased by a 9th-grade supreme powerhouse for 4.2 million spiritual liquid, while other Earth Supremes also auctioned off items worth millions of supreme spiritual liquid. Not far from there, Lin Dong and his group were about to leave. Their next plan was to head to the central region of the auction continent, where it was said that the largest scale auction would take place. The event was hosted by the legendary Primordial Divine Clan, who held a fabled status in the Great Thousand Worlds. However, just as Lin Dong and his group were about to depart, a huge, clear bell chime suddenly rang throughout the world, echoing across the entire auction continent. Upon hearing the chime, the noisy auction continent fell silent, and nearly everyone looked up at the sky. Lin Dong and the others were no exception, and as Lin Dong gazed upward, the same scene unfolded before the eyes of everyone on the auction continent. Buzz. At a height of 1,000,000 miles, a massive spatial rift over 10,000 miles long spread open. From within, countless figures, surrounded by powerful spiritual energy, surged out like a tidal wave. Even Lin Dong was shocked by the sight, as at least 100,000 figures emerged from the rift. But what was even more astonishing was that each of these figures possessed at least supreme-level strength. In the sky, within the vast spatial rift, the 100,000 supreme powerhouses poured out like a black tide. When so many supreme-level powerhouses gathered together, their terrifying combined power was enough to make even heavenly supreme powerhouses feel a sense of dread. The 100,000 supreme-level powerhouses stood firm above the auction continent, then slowly dispersed into 4 teams, 2 teams of 20,000 and 2 teams of 30,000. Each team, standing neatly in the sky, possessed the power to annihilate an Earth's supreme powerhouse with ease. Those are the primordial divine armies. Exclamations rang out from all corners of the auction continent. All eyes turned to the 4 teams hovering in the sky. Primordial divine armies? Lin Dong looked at the 4 terrifying teams in the sky, shocked. From the overwhelming pressure coming from above, he suspected that he didn't have the strength to even challenge one of those teams. Normally, he wouldn't fear 30,000 supreme-level powerhouses, but these teams seemed to have fused their energies into one single, formidable force for some unknown reason. Could these be the battle formation masters that Xiao He and Xiao Yin mentioned? The Primordial Divine Armies are the 4 top-tier military forces within the Primordial Divine Clan. The clan is made up of 4 subclans, each with its own divine army. Each divine army is led by an Earth Supreme powerhouse. The Primordial Divine Armies employ a type of ancient battle formation created by one of the top 10 powerhouses from back then. With this formation, each army has the power to contend with heavenly supreme powerhouses, Elder Song explained. However, it seems these armies are only at 1/3 of their full strength right now. 1/3. Upon hearing Elder Song's explanation, Lin Dong, Ling Qingzhu, and Fanling were all stunned. If this is only 1/3, then what would the complete Primordial Divine Army be like? Moreover, Lin Dong was even more curious about who the leader of these divine armies might be, and just how powerful they were. Buzz. The first divine army was led by a middle-aged man, whose strength had reached the mid-earth supreme level. The following 2 divine armies were each led by 2 elders, both with strength around the mid-earth supreme level. However, the last divine army caught Lin Dong's attention because its leader was a young man dressed in a black robe. This young man had a handsome appearance and exuded an extremely confident aura. Standing with his hands behind his back, he gazed down at everyone on the auction continent. His mid-earth supreme strength, combined with the divine army behind him, made him fully deserving of such authority. Who is he? Lin Dong asked, staring at the young man in black. Elder Song, standing beside him, squinted his eyes upon hearing this question, then replied, "He's Mohe Tian from the Mohe god clan of the ancient god tribe." In the sky above, as the 4 divine armies of the ancient god tribe appeared, a terrifying aura of oppression spread, causing thunderous roars to echo across the Auction continent, like the sound of war drums. Countless gazes below watched the formidable divine armies. In the Great Thousand Worlds, top-tier forces often maintained elite guard armies. These armies, when combined with certain formations, could unleash the battle power of thousands, even tens of thousands, from just a few hundred warriors. Among these formations, the battle formations crafted by battle formation masters were the highest level. When a true battle formation master controlled a powerful army, the resulting force could obliterate an entire lower dimension. The 4 divine armies before them were utilizing the highest-level ancient battle formations. Mohe God Clan? Mohe Tian? Lin Dong was startled by Elder Song's words. Mohe Tian appeared to be about the same age as Lin Dong, yet his strength, at the Mid-Earth Supreme level, was no weaker than Lin Dong's. Lin Dong had only reached the Mid-Earth Supreme after refining an entire super lower dimension in a very short time. Mohe Tian is the young clan leader of the Mohe God clan, and one of the 3 divine sons within the clan. Though he's the youngest of the 3, his talent is terrifying, even ranking first among the 3 divine sons. Do you know how many years it took him to reach the Mid-Earth Supreme? Elder Song said as he looked at the young man in black in the sky. Lin Dong was slightly taken aback, not understanding how Elder Song knew about Mohe Tian, as this was the first time Lin Dong had heard of him. Heh. The other 2 divine sons took 30 years and 25 years, but Mohe Tian only took 16 years. Elder Song continued. 16 years? Lin Dong was shocked upon hearing this. He had initially thought Mohe Tian might have taken over 20 years to reach the Mid-Earth Supreme, but to his surprise, Mohe Tian had only taken 16 years. This person truly was a super-level existence. If Mohe Tian can reach the Heavenly Supreme within 5 years, the future of the Mohe God clan might belong to him, Elder Song added. The strong experts of the ancient God clan are indeed numerous, Lin Dong commented. Of course. What is about to unfold is the Great Thousand Assembly, which concerns the entire Great Thousand World. I suspect these 4 divine armies are only the surface display. Hidden within the millions of miles around here, there are at least 5 to 10 Heavenly Supreme experts, Elder Song said. Could it be to guard against a sudden attack from the extraterrestrial evil clan? Fanling asked from the side. Heh, the extraterrestrial evil clan isn't stupid. Almost all of the top-tier experts from the Great Thousand World are gathered here. They're not afraid to come, they just don't need to. Coming here would be meaningless. To defeat so many powerful warriors, the extraterrestrial evil clan would have to expend nearly half of their strength. If it were me, I wouldn't bother, Elder Song said. The reason the ancient God clan has gathered so many top-tier experts here is simply to show everyone how terrifying their combined strength is. Just standing here and sensing the aura of everyone around you makes that clear. With this power, we don't need to fear the extraterrestrial evil clan. However, this power isn't as cohesive as it seems. For one thing, there's a lack of a leading force to command it. At this moment, the appearance of the ancient divine army is the ancient God clan's declaration that they are qualified to lead all the forces on this continent. I see, Lin Dong nodded. Just as his words fell, the thunderous roars in the sky suddenly intensified. The 4 incomplete ancient divine armies began preparing to move toward the center of the Auction continent. 4 powerful legions of the ancient divine army, each consisting of 100,000 supreme warriors, moved in perfect unison, forming a strikingly orderly and awe-inspiring scene. Under the gaze of everyone present, the 4 legions transformed into storms, sweeping toward the center of the Auction continent. It seems the Great Thousand Assembly is about to begin. I wonder if the 2 ancient beings from the Ancient Divine Clan and the Myriad Spirit Divine Clan will show up? Heh, although the Great Thousand Assembly is the highest level event, it's not the most critical time for the Great Thousand Worlds. Those 2 legendary figures, I don't think they'll appear. As the 4 legions of the ancient divine army charged forward, voices of discussion began to rise from all over the Auction continent. The ancient beings from the ancient divine clan and the myriad spirit divine clan? Hearing the murmurs around him, Lin Dong asked in confusion. To be considered a fossil by the top powers of the entire Great Thousand World, those beings must have powers far beyond even ordinary heavenly supremes. Those two beings are probably the ancestors of the ancient divine clan and the myriad spirit divine clan. It's said that their ages exceeded 100,000 years during the ancient cataclysmic war. They were also among the top 3 of the 10 superpowers of the Great Thousand Worlds back then. I don't even know the details about them. All I know is that the top 3 of the 10 superpowers had already surpassed the Heavenly Supreme, and one of them perished in the cataclysmic war, Elder Song explained. Surpassing the Heavenly Supreme. Upon hearing this, Lin Dong was shocked. After all, in his eyes, a Heavenly Supreme was already an incredibly high existence. To surpass a Heavenly Supreme. Lin Dong paused, then asked, Elder Song, do you know what realm exists beyond the Heavenly Supreme? To Lin Dong's surprise, Elder Song shook his head with a somewhat helpless expression. The realm beyond the Heavenly Supreme has no specific name. It might be the ultimate realm, but in the Great Thousand World, some of the most powerful beings have started to refer to it as the Great Dominator Stage. However, as for detailed information on the Great Dominator Stage, there is only one person in the Great Thousand World who knows about it. Who? Lin Dong asked, and even Fanling became curious. Yuan Cheng, Elder Song answered. You once received help from the leader of the Great Thousand Alliance, Nanjianzi. Yuan Cheng is in the Great Thousand Alliance. Then, the ancient beings of the ancient divine clan and the myriad spirit divine clan. Did they reach the Great Dominator Stage? Lin Dong asked again. However, Elder Song's firm reply left Lin Dong stunned once more. No, absolutely not, Elder Song said. But if those two ancient beings surpass the Heavenly Supreme, and the realm above the Heavenly Supreme is the Great Dominator Stage, doesn't that mean they are at the Great Dominator Stage? Lin Dong asked. In fact, the transition between the Heavenly Supreme and the Great Dominator Stage is not direct. There is an intermediate minor stage between these two realms, which we call the Minor Dominator Stage. In the Great Thousand World, there is a saying called breaking the rules and striving for control, which refers to surpassing the Heavenly Supreme and reaching the Minor Dominator Stage, Elder Song explained. Upon hearing this, Lin Dong looked at Ling Qingzhu. The two exchanged glances, as they recalled something. In this case, the so-called Minor Dominator Stage seemed similar to the transition between the Death Void Realm and the Reincarnation Realm in the Heavenly Mystic Dimension, which was also called the Wheel Realm. Of course, the Wheel Realm and the Minor Dominator Stage couldn't be compared directly. Lin Dong gently squeezed Ling Qingzhu's hand. He thought that if he could reach the Minor Dominator Stage, or even the Great Dominator Stage, rescuing Huan Huan from the Ice Spirit Clan would be as easy as flipping his hand. But fantasizing wouldn't lead to progress. Only by working harder could he reach that legendary realm. After all, hadn't he started as a mere body refinement stage cultivator, weaker than an ant? He had grown stronger step by step, leaving Qingyang Town, leaving Yin City, leaving the Great Yin Dynasty, battling in the 100 Dynasty War, joining the Dao sect, confronting the Yuan sect. Even though he was forced out of the Eastern Mystic region, he had returned. The young man was no longer the same as before. He had been growing stronger, and no one could stop him. Not the Yuan sect, not the extraterrestrial evil clan, and now, not even the Ice Spirit clan. We should go too, Lin Dong said, pulling Ling Qingzhu with him as they slowly flew toward the sky, also addressing Elder Song and Fanling. I also want to see this Great Thousand Assembly. Maybe I'll run into some old friends and, if possible, recruit a few into the martial realm, Elder Song said, rising into the air. Fanling followed closely behind. Lin Dong gazed at the horizon ahead. With a swift movement, he shot forward at an incredible speed, carrying Ling Qingzhu with him, while Elder Song and the others quickly followed. Swish, swish, swish. At the same time, sharp sounds of air being sliced open echoed across the auction continent. At that moment, nearly all of the top-tier powerhouses on the continent were heading towards the central region. The massive convergence of these powerful beings created a tremendous aura that, in fact, surpassed even the 4 ancient divine armies in scale and intensity. About 10 minutes later, 4 figures shot across the sky nearly 100,000 miles from the central region of the continent. As they moved at breakneck speed, the immense wind pressure they generated formed a massive white cloud trail behind them, stretching for nearly 1,000 miles. These cloud trails appeared in all directions across the Auction continent, creating a breathtaking sight. The central region of the Auction continent was an expansive, flat square stretching tens of thousands of miles. This area, known as the Great Thousand Ground, was the largest plaza in the entire Great Thousand Worlds, with a size so immense that even some of the most powerful figures in the Great Thousand Worlds could hardly imagine it. The Great Thousand Ground stood tens of thousands of feet high, surrounded by layer upon layer of circular staircases. From the top, one could overlook the entire Auction continent, with only a few super peaks exceeding 100,000 feet in height. Boom, boom, boom. Suddenly, a deafening roar rang through the heavens and earth. In the distance, massive black torrents surged across the horizon. In just a few moments, the 4 powerful ancient divine armies appeared around the Great Thousand Ground. However, they did not ascend to the plaza itself, but instead settled in the 4 surrounding forests, like ancient beasts waiting to respond to any changes in the area. Swish, swish, swish. As the 4 ancient divine armies arrived, within a few minutes, more piercing sounds of air being cut echoed through the surroundings. These new arrivals were all high-level powerhouses, starting from the 7th grade supreme and above. Within just 2 minutes, over 200,000 strong cultivators had gathered, including nearly 100 Earth Supremes. Such a gathering of power at this scale was unparalleled anywhere else in the Great Thousand Worlds. After about another 10 breaths, the figures of Lin Dong and his group appeared, flying in from the horizon, their figures landing outside the Great Thousand Ground. Lin Dong couldn't help but be astonished as he looked around at the countless powerful figures that had assembled. "What an intimidating display of power," Fanling said in shock. As the leader of his sect, he had never witnessed such a scene before. To be honest, he never even imagined that such a grand gathering could take place in the Great Thousand Worlds. A powerhouse like him, an Earth Supreme, could typically be considered a major figure in most parts of the world. However, here, with more than 100 Earth Supremes gathered, even someone at his level was not exceptional. Suddenly, Lin Dong seemed to sense something. He immediately shifted his gaze towards the other side of the Great Thousand Ground. Due to a special formation in this area, the visibility here was several levels higher than in the outside world, allowing one to see things from thousands of miles away, as long as their eyes were sharp enough. When Lin Dong's gaze landed on the other side of the Great Thousand Ground, his expression froze slightly. "What's wrong?" Ling Qingzhu asked. "Look over there, a familiar face," Lin Dong said, pointing towards the horizon. In the sky, about 10,000 miles away, several figures hovered in mid-air. At the front of these figures was a young man in white, standing with his hands behind his back. Though his face was youthful, there was a deep, aged aura emanating from him. This figure was none other than the leader of the Great Thousand Alliance, Nantianzi. As Lin Dong directed his gaze towards Nantianzi, the latter seemed to sense it. He slightly turned his head, acknowledging the presence of Lin Dong and his group. However, he said nothing.